Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with the 31 days of gangster films and police films from the year 1970 to the present day. And it is my hope that this can afford us, you and me, my dear friends, with the opportunity to be able to speak about as many films as possible over the course of these 31 days in the context of these very invigorating, exciting, and thought-provoking and very memorable genres of cinema, those being the police film genre and the gangster film genre, respectively. In that spirit, for purposes of today, and specifically this video, I'd like to focus in on an example of the gangster film genre. And this is a film from filmmakers whose works we have spoken about, in fact, over the course of these 31 days. And indeed, I dare say that we might speak about other works by these filmmakers in the future, in the remaining days. For today, let us focus in on another example of these filmmakers' works, this work, which I'll mention momentarily. This is a work that is so much of a landmark, milestone work. It has such a cultural impact legacy to it. It is an iconic work. It is so also outlandish, over the top, audacious, ambitious. It's a crime epic saga that is exploding with an with indeed a type of electrifying, uncontrollable energy that serves the film to such a brilliant degree. It is, as I mentioned, audacious, ambitious. It is also very controversial, very much a film that has so many elements to it that seems so almost inappropriate and so in your face and so very much almost incorrect and offensive. And indeed, it is very controversial, and it remains very controversial to a number of people, to a number of circles, because of certain aspects of issues of its maybe subject matter or depictions or maybe casting, etc. And so these are examples of how much this film has engendered discussion and debate over the years since its initial release, while at the same time has engendered this incredible type of attention that has, as I say, almost cemented it to its landmark status in the context of 20th century cinema, American cinema, gangster cinema, and indeed the cinema of this filmmaker that I will now mention. This is a work that is from 1983, and this is a film produced by Martin Bregman, and it is directed by Brian De Palma, and it has a cast. It's now so legendary, including, for example, Stephen Bauer and Robert Loggia and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio and Michelle Pfeiffer, and starring as the character Tony Montana, stars Al Pacino. Al Pacino is Tony Montana in this work, which is Scarface. Scarface. This is, again, one of those over-the-top, super memorable works. It has such a following, and it has that following. It's had that following since the early days. And it is a film that I saw on network TV way back in the day when I was a kid, and then I saw it on VHS rental. So that's how I knew the film growing up. And all the while, it had this type of legend about it being, it grew in my mind and I'm sure the minds of many people in my generation, as being one of the most violent and one of the most intense films that you will ever see. And it was, and when I saw it on VHS as a in VHS rental stores, it really was an intense experience, all the way from the very beginning, and the sweep of the music, and the real 80s feel to the crime and the violence that was being depicted either on screen or off screen, and thus inside my own imagination. And there are some really intense, really brutal scenes, and they are made even more, rendered even more brutal by the fact that sometimes we see the violence on screen, but a lot of times there are choices made quite artfully so, where that is not shown on screen directly. And so those are very effective and thus make for even more of a chilling experience. So this is a very intense film in that way. And so it's not, of course, for all tastes, that's for sure. But in those ways, that viewing of this film on, as I say, VHS rental, etc., that was part of the legend, and that was part of the impact and legacy for people like me to view this film and to see that film carried through all the way to this present day, with all the various releases on physical media, etc. And it still remains a type of a milestone, landmark film in the context of genre cinema, in the context of Al Pacino's filmography, in the context of Michelle Pfeiffer's filmography, Brian De Palma's filmography, in the context of, say, the gangster film and the like. And so this is one of the big ones. This is one of the big ones. It has, of course, that plot involving the Al Pacino and Al Pacino's character and Stephen Bauer's character and others as refugees from Cuba to the United States to Florida. And from here we see, or we get a sense of that life in terms of their lives as refugees first entering into the United States, and then later through various set of circumstances that are introduced fairly early, we see their rise from, say, a say, maybe low-level petty criminals at first, but are actually maybe dealing with not so petty crimes. They're dealing with very violent crimes from the very get-go, in fact. But they seem to be, in terms of organized crime structures in this part of the country, involving the drug trade. They rise, maybe not somewhat slowly, but actually rather quickly, through the ranks until they are able, in particular Tony Montana, the Al Pacino character, is able to see his own rise in power and wealth, to the point of being so high. But like many of these stories about the rise of gangsters, there is the rise and there is the fall. And so this is that type of epic sweep arc, crime film deluxe to the max. This is the rise and fall of the gangster criminal Tony Montana in this film Scarface, with all of the flashes and brilliance and in-your-face shocking moments of this over-the-top film to the excess. 1980s Brian De Palma crime saga epic, violent, outrageous, controversial, excessive. It's all there, and it is. It exists like that, and I would dare say it proudly exists like that. You know, one of the things that is really part of the discussion is there are aspects of this, of course, that are really quite outrageous, that are aspects that are so outrageous, in fact, that they are they may be considered to be quite inappropriate For instance, the way that this film might be seen to be handling depictions of race or ethnicity in the context of, say, the casting, etc., or the context of the content, as well as depictions of violence and the like. And so these conversations, I think, can be very reasonably made, and that they continue to be had, I think, is very important. But however, I would suggest too, or at least in parallel to that, that this film exists in that context because of its the fact that it's a collection of many intense and quite hyper energized elements rolled into this film, which is by Brian De Palma, or directed by Brian De Palma. And Brian De Palma's filmography is one where we have so many uh, almost hyper energized, disparate elements rolled together into these works of cinema that are part of his filmography, and they are not without controversy. They are not without their share of detractors, and they're not without their share of type of intense debate. But that's part of that's part of the kind of the makeup, if you will, of a Brian De Palma film, a very effective Brian De Palma film. And we have not just Brian De Palma's contributions, but also other contributing factors here, such as the performances and also Oliver Stone's contribution and the like. So all of this here is part of the almost hyper energized maelstrom of a cinematic event that is Scarface. So, however you feel about this film, whether you are maybe not a fan at all of this film, or you are a fan of this film, or you are a fan while still recognizing the failings of the film, etc., whatever the case may be, I think this film still rests within the context of the gangster film genre, even now, to the point that it is a film that, as I say, continues to show and engender a lot of discussion and a lot of reviews and a lot of attention. And that is because it is so memorable the way it is. I mean, without a doubt, this is, as I say, a landmark film in the genre. It is a landmark film in the genre because it has affected so many. It has there is a type of following that is so intense with this film. There is a type of it has almost a life of its own, as it were, and it exists in many forms beyond the film itself, and that is, I think, that is primarily due to just how effective this film was and is. I mean, it is without a doubt a very overwhelming and effective viewing experience, and for many reasons. The performances are there. The dialogue is so quotable. It is so quotable, and it's so memorable in that way. And there's so many lines of dialogue that are quotable here. I mean, I could mention so many, but let me just make an aside here and say that, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I first saw this film, in the VHS era, but actually, I should say that I'd seen it also in the TV broadcast version. And as some of you may know, this film, Scarface, has a lot of profanity, a lot of swear words in it. And part of the thing about a US TV broadcast is that profanity and swear words needed to be edited out or needed to be dubbed over with non-profanity, or words that were considered not offensive in that way. And so to watch this film in that TV broadcast version was an experience in and of itself, thus making my actual viewing of the actual, say, VHS or theatrical version, whatever, with the actual expletive or profanity included, that was a real shocking experience for me, because, as I say, I also knew the TV version. So, for example, I mentioned the dialogue. So there's a moment in the TV version, very, very early on, one of the opening scenes, where someone asks the main character, the Tony Montana character, and I'm paraphrasing here. So there's a talk about a physical part of his face, a scar that appears on the face of Tony Montana, thus making the allusion to the title itself, Scarface. So someone asks the character early on, where did you get this beauty scar? Eating pineapple? And so there's this phrase about eating pineapple in the TV version. And so I don't want to repeat what this version, this is actually the version that is not the phrase eating pineapple that you see in the theatrical version. In fact, the phrase eating pineapple is a replacement of what was a different word altogether. And so I don't want to repeat that here for purposes of this video. If you know the film, you know what I'm talking about. And in any event, that was, let me say, a very shocking, eye-opening thing for me to experience that version of the film. And thus that is an example of just kind of a shocking, almost confrontational manner that this film had and has, and it is one that remains a film that has so many echoes, so many reverberations, so many vibrations, and is that type of tidal wave effect within the context of American cinema and Brian De Palma cinema and Al Pacino cinema. That is Scarface. I should mention too that the character of Tony Montana, as he's depicted here, he is a character that we are shown is one that is carrying out these very almost horrible acts, very despicable, reprehensible acts. And so he is seen as not even a type of anti-hero, but oftentimes the film does not shy away from the fact that he does some pretty terrible things. He does some pretty terrible things. He also has what might be said to be a type of moral code in certain scenes. So it is this quite almost complex viewing of the film where we see the Tony Montana, as I say, his rise and fall. But what I appreciate as a viewer of this film, what I appreciate is that the film does show the high intensity, the real highs, the euphoric highs, almost the drug-induced highs, as it were, of his particular state, given his situation and the immense wealth and power that he is able to inhabit. But also, the film shows us his mistakes, his failings, and the fact that when he falls from his high, he really falls, and so there's almost a sense of just desserts that might be felt, and that also might give a sense of a type of moral retribution, which is, I believe, very much inherent in the film. As outrageous as it might seem on the surface, there is, one can argue, a sense of retribution that takes place in terms of a type of moral scale, given the context of the seemingly or arguably amoral or immoral aspects that are on display in the context of the characterization of Tony Montana. So that part of the film is, I think, definitely there, and that is also part of the discussion or debate that one can have when one speaks of this film, Scarface. But I do want to say that the rise and fall aspect is also accompanied by this very, I think, rugged and in-your-face depiction of the Tony Montana character, Al Pacino's characterization here, which I think therefore makes the film very much an effective vehicle. Indeed, and I do appreciate that. I do appreciate the fact that we can see this character. He is the main character. He does maybe some funny things, maybe some humorous and charming things. He also does some really terrible things, and really vicious things as well. And so that is I think this type of maybe nuanced is not the right word, but it's something where we see a lot of extremes. And that mixture of extremes can yield some feelings of ambiguity and some feelings of doubt. But I think that's also part of the viewing experience, or one of the possibilities of viewing experiences that one can have when watching Scarface. And I think is a hallmark of a very successful viewing indeed. So this is just a very memorable watch. Every time I watch this film, it is so memorable. It is so absorbing. And it becomes this, as I say, this hyper-realized example of supercharged energy of cinema, almost to the point where just not even boiling point, but beyond the meter type of supercharged energy. It's just off the charts hyper realized, and that is one of its great strengths. It is over the top and ambitious, but it doesn't. It's not embarrassed by being so. It is in that way a real supreme example of 1980s gangster film Brian De Palma cinema, and it's, for all that that means, it remains that way, and I think it is not ashamed for that status. And I think that also alone gives it so much more of that long lasting landmark legacy appeal that I think will go on for many, many years to come. This is one of the classics. This is one of the hallmarks. This is one of the landmark milestones of the gangster genre. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. This is the film from 1983, and it is Scarface. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. So thank you very much for your time. I very, very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers. And the world is yours.